most important one they did through a lot of case studies throughout Bazi history is not the year, month, or hour, it is the day. So they call that the day master. The reason that's important is everything in your chart, those remaining 7 characters out of the 8, are relative to your day master. So you cannot interpret a Bazi until you know what someone's day master is.
I'm Michael Max, and this is Qiological. I was talking with some friends the other day, and the conversation swung around to how often we don't really trust our own medicine. I talked about this last week, how at times I put in a few extra needles to, quote, cover the bases. What's another way to say that? Another way to say that is, I don't trust what I'm doing. Have you ever thought or said to a Chinese medicine pal, damn, this stuff really works? How is it that we're surprised when we actually get the results that we expected? We want to believe that we got some serious medicine that can help people, and yet, when it really does, there's that part of us that stands in astonishment. How many of us dare to stand firmly in the place that Chinese medicine can stand alone by itself without having to cozy up to more conventional medicine? How many of us finish acupuncture school and then feel like we need to work in a chiropractor or MD's office because we can ride on the coattails of their credibility with mainstream culture? How many of us get an RN degree so we can, again, quote, legitimize our medicine, or dip into the popularity of functional medicine because we're not getting the results we want with Chinese medicine, or biohack our way into the current hot trends of culture, hoping to gain some stature from a medicine that might be popular but is not ours? How often do we conflate our current inability to use Chinese medicine with Chinese medicine not being able to treat certain conditions? My heart breaks a little bit every time I hear practitioners say, Chinese medicine doesn't do this, when in fact, they've not yet been able to grow their understanding of the medicine to the point where they can help people with those troublesome conditions. We complain that the conventional culture doesn't take us seriously, but really, I suspect it's that we're not taking ourselves seriously enough to hold ourselves to a higher standard. We complain that we're left off the insurance rolls, and at the same time, do we really want to be constrained by the same accounting, profit-driven matrix that handcuffs our conventional medicine colleagues? The gold standard is not what improves an insurance company's bottom line. It's the clinical results that we can get for our patients. If we genuinely help people in such a way that they can genuinely feel the value of the time spent with us, then we get another opportunity to help and be of service. That paper that you got when you graduated from Chinese medicine school, it's not a stamp of approval that you understand the medicine. It's a learner's permit. And part of that learning is to keep working at what we don't yet understand, and to be able not just to help people with what we've already learned, but to be able to use each clinical encounter in such a way as to keep refining our craft. Let's get into today's conversation of the Bazi, the 8 characters that tell you something about your character and the influences of your particular corner of the universe. These conversations come to you through the generous support of our sponsors and members. All the sponsors here provide helpful products or services that you'll find beneficial in your clinical work. Want to get better at treating concussions and other neurological conditions? Clayton Shu has some innovative methods. Blue Poppy, your new one-stop shop, has speedy shipping options on everything that you need for your clinic. Later in the show, Jane offers you helpful suggestions on how to raise your rates, and Golden Flower Chinese Herbs shares a journey of healing that I think you'll recognize. Do be sure to visit the sponsors page on the Qiological website to take advantage of all the special offers our terrific sponsors have for listeners of the podcast. Picture this. Your clinic is buzzing with patients, and then you realize that you're down to your last box of needles. No need for panic, because Blue Poppy, your one-stop shop for all your acupuncture needs, they ship orders received before 3 p.m. on the same day. With a quick visit to Blue Poppy's website, you can order premium needles, herbal formulas, and that special Dr. Bob's oil that your patients love. Blue Poppy understands practitioners can't keep patients waiting. That's why they strive to get you what you need when you need it. From high-quality Chinese herbs and formulations to acupuncture supplies and clinical essentials, Blue Poppy has served practitioners for nearly 40 years with products that meet the highest of standards. Discover everything Blue Poppy has to offer by visiting www.bluepoppy.com, and don't forget to subscribe to their mailing list for exclusive offers and more. Ever found yourself listening to a Qiological conversation and thinking, wow, I needed to hear that? Yeah, me too. And I never know when I'm going to hear a guest say something that stops my world and reboots it with a larger perspective. If these conversations have ever helped you to feel more grounded, more inspired, or just less alone in this strange and wonderful work we do, consider becoming a member or supporting the podcast with a bit of tithing to the donation jar. It helps keep the lights on here at the Qiological Sound and Motion Lab so that we can bring you these conversations every Tuesday morning. You'll find all the details at qiological.com. Thanks for listening and for being a part of this.
Hey there, I'm Cameron Jafari, an acupuncturist from Los Angeles. So I started learning nanopuncture from Dr. Clayton Shu because I was facing these complex neurological conditions like stroke and MS in my clinic, and I just felt like I lacked a solid process to treat them. Brain-related issues always felt like a whole different animal, and I was looking for a clinical system that worked and could guide me through them. So after attending my first nanopuncture seminar, I was able to apply the process pretty quickly and with pretty amazing results. I remember the first stroke patient I saw afterwards was a guy who had had a stroke 2 years back, and he couldn't talk at all. And after a few treatments, he started saying a few words. And a few treatments after that, he could actually have conversations. It was pretty incredible. So this is why I feel like nanopuncture is the future of acupuncture neurology. And you can be a part of that. Their next seminar is on treating concussions and is being co-taught by both Dr. Shu and Dr. Ayla Wolf in New York City on April 26th and 27th. To learn more, visit nanopunctureseminars.com.
Welcome back to Qiological. I've got Paul Wang with me today. Paul Wang is an acupuncturist. He teaches acupuncture. We'll talk a little more about that later. But the main thrust of what I'm interested in having a conversation with Paul about today is this thing called the Bazi, which is, you could call it Chinese astrology. I don't know much about it. I've heard a bit about it. So when I found out that Paul knew a thing or two about it, I thought, I got to get this cat on the show. So, Paul, welcome to Qiological.
Thanks a lot, Max. It's great to be here. I'm honored to be on your podcast. And hello to all the listeners out there, too.
So, Bazi, right? This generally, this literally translates as 8 characters.
Yes.
And this is Chinese astrology. Before we get into this, I am always curious to know what set people off on the path that they're on. There's usually a pivotal moment or a set of circumstances that kind of shifts our trajectory. What set you on the path with learning about and using the Bazi?
I would say I was born in Taiwan. So the first time I encountered so-called Bazi, birth chart analysis, was my mother actually did it for me. I think I was 12, 13 at the time. And she didn't tell me that she went to did it, but she came home and had this chart. And it didn't make any sense to me at the time. But years later, she dug it out again. And I was able to then interpret it. So that was, I guess, back in the 80s. So fast forward many, many years later, I was at UC Berkeley, University of California, Berkeley, Cal. And I was in pre-med to become a Western medical doctor. I wanted to go into surgery. We don't have to get into the whole story of that, but through some coincidences, through some reasons, and actually a student-run class, they call it democratic education at Cal. Some students started an integrative medicine class, and one of the speakers was Chinese medicine doctor. And the next week was acupuncturist. And that kind of first opened my mind, even though that's my kind of cultural background, to what Chinese medicine is. And the very simple concept at the time, I didn't think of it, I guess, because I was more of a academic, is that Chinese medicine focuses on restoring health versus getting rid of disease. I was like, light bulb. Okay, that makes sense.
It does make sense, right?
And then I did like an internship at a hospital. I was like, wow, this is pretty crazy, actually, that how it works, to be a surgeon. I didn't realize that it was so, to say simply, it's so stressful. And then I heard a lot of my co-students were a couple of years ahead of me, and then they were complaining about being hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. So that kind of set me on the path to Chinese medicine, which I went straight into after undergrad, and then met a couple teachers actually. But one of my first teachers I met was Dr. Richard Tan, who's known for systematizing what he called the balance method. And so the first time I met him, I was pretty astounded. He answered a lot of the questions that I had, and even some unknown questions that I didn't ask yet. He kind of resolved for me. So I was so impressed, but something compelled me to go up to him at the end of the seminar, even though I still consider myself introverted, but something just pulled me up. And I said, Dr. Tan, I would love to become your apprentice or disciple. And then he kind of smirked at me like, who is this guy? Who is this kid? And he said one thing. He said, well, we'll have to look at your 八字. I was like, oh. So I half knew what that was.
I happen to have a 八字.
Exactly. I pulled it out. but I kind of froze, and I'm like, oh, okay, thank you. And I just walked away. But so my formal introduction to 八字was actually through him. He taught courses in that. He was known for acupuncture, but he also taught courses in, I call it the ABC. A for acupuncture, balanced method acupuncture. And the B is for balanced method 八字, or birth chart analysis for B. And the C was cultivation, qi cultivation. So our topic this time is on the B, 八字. And that's where it started. And then since I learned that system, I've done, I don't know how many hundreds of cases and developed my own experience and interpretation of what those 8 characters, as you said, mean.
So 8 characters. What 8 characters are we looking at? Is this something from the I Ching? Is this something from some other system? What do these 8 characters represent?
Simply, think of a grid, 2 rows and 4 columns. And so that's, equals to 8 kind of spaces on a graph or a matrix. And it starts from, there is an association with the I Ching, simply even with this concept of I. One of the 3 meanings of I is change. And
as in I Ching.
As in I Ching, yeah, the Book of Changes is often how it's translated. So it is, the ancients, observed that everything is changing, from different traditions. And in the Chinese tradition, or even in just a human kind of being, right, we exist in space-time, or time-space in the more Chinese conception. And if you move from point A to point B in space, you pass through time as well. So time and space are kind of one continuum. And that was recognized, back in the day, but more recently in the West, right, with Einstein in the 1920s, about 100 years ago, kind of merged those concepts. But in Chinese, we call it 时空, which is literally 时空, literally means time and space. So this yep. Literally, actually. So this started from observing nature. So in Chinese, again, don't mean to throw out so many Chinese terms, but
that's okay. We'll put them on the show notes.
Okay.
Down at the bottom of the show notes page, we'll have the Chinese and the pinyin and what it means, so folks can see what it is.
Yeah. So again, related to, I work my way into 八字, but I kind of want to give a context and a bit of a historical or ontogeny, how it's developed. And the other observation in terms of space-time is our daily cycles. For instance, the space is the 4 cardinal directions, north, south, east, west. And time moving through that is sunrise in the east, right? And then sunset in the west, and then also the north, south as noon and midnight. And another observation was not the diurnal cycle, but the annual cycle among the 4 seasons. There's also something they observed spatially in the sky around the North Star, which was the Ursa Major, the Big Dipper, the Great Bear. The handle of that pointed to the 4 cardinal directions as well, spatially, as we move through the 4 seasons. During the springtime, the handle of the Big Dipper points east, and during the summertime it points south, and during the fall it points west, and during the winter it points north.
No kidding.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
At least relative to the northern hemisphere and where China is. So that's another temporal spatial kind of unity or relationship that they observe. And so then we're getting into heaven and earth, or heaven, human and earth, right? It's humans that are with our special consciousness able to observe these dynamic relationships between sky and earth, between as above and so below. So in Chinese, we call it 天文地理. You hear 天人地, right? 天 is heaven or sky. 地 is earth. And these are actually even terms used in modern times. 天文 is literally 天 is sky, and 文 is literally patterns. And 地 is earth, and 理 is principle. So 天文 literally means the patterns of heaven or the sky. And 地理 literally means the principle of earth.
And that Li is the one that has like the Wang, right?
太好了. 对.
So it's the one that's like, it's like the grain that's in a piece of wood, or like the structure that's in a stone. It's this thing that it's like the fascia that goes through a human body, right? It's this thing that kind of pulls other stuff together and holds it together. It's that Li, right?
Don't get me started on that. Like, if I have time,
is so cool.
Yeah, I know. If I have a spare time, which is rare nowadays, I love to work with the wood. And the most compelling, the most inspiring part is, the worst part is the sanding. You got to sand down, all the different layers. But the most gratifying part is when you pour the oil on and you see that Li come out.
There's the Li, yeah.
Beautiful, yeah. So that's exactly the Li. Yeah.
Okay.
The Li of earth and the Wen, the patterns of heaven. So now I mentioned 天文地理, which would you can say is astronomy and geography, or other modern terms you can say is astrophysics and geology. So basically that's the modern kind of terminology. Astro and geo would be 天地.
Astrophysics and geology. I mean, just taking those two words and putting them together and sitting with that for a moment. It's like, oh, that's right. Of course they would connect, but until you bring it up in this moment, and before I connected them together, I thought, two separate disciplines. One's about heaven, one's about earth. But if you look at them as two sides of the same expression,
sure,
there it is. There's the connection.
It's beautiful, and even connecting to the ren or human level, right? All the iron in your blood and all the calcium in the bones comes from astrophysics. Comes from the center of stars. Hydrogen to helium, 600 million tons of that being converted in the sun, just our sun. Let alone the trillions of suns in our unknown numbers of suns.
Yeah,
and
over unknown time.
Unknown time, right? And then then our body's also coming from Earth. From the food and minerals that we eat. So there's a direct connection to it. Not just in a philosophical or metaphysical way too. So to the 8 characters, then 4 of them are from Tian, endowed from Tian, and 4 of them are endowed from Di, earth. So that's the top row and bottom row. And the 4 columns represent the year, month, day, and hour of your birth. So there's many more layers of meaning, as you know from Chinese medicine. We can interpret one concept or one symbol in dozens of ways, right?
Right. Context is so important.
So important. Yeah, so important. So yeah, those are where the 8 characters come from there. So to do someone's chart, you need to know their year, month, day, and time of birth. And then also their city, their coordinates, because sometimes we have to adjust for daylight savings or different time zones. And once you have that, that's all you need. Very simple. And then you can calculate using a formula or the calendar, Bazi calendar, someone's 8 characters, which then kind of becomes their sort of genetic blueprint, to use an analogy. So that's one thing you do. And the second thing you do is then you lay out their so-called 大运, which is the great transportation or the great progression of their life along 10-year waves, or a decade. So you also have pillars, you have columns as a second part of the chart, which represent the main themes of their life over decades. And some people like say they're really into like, making money or really, chasing that for a while, and suddenly they shift, right? And to spirituality or something like that. Like, so those kind of major shifts are documented in someone's life progression, which would kind of be more like the epigenetic unfolding of their genetic birth chart constitution.
Does this happen in decades of 10, or does it come in like cycles of 12? I know that Chinese thinking is a bit different from Western thinking. We often think in 10s. It seems Chinese thinking often goes in 12s.
Yeah, Chinese thinking has many mathematical bases. The first is wuqi, which is one, the unity or the singularity, which contains all duality, but it's undifferentiated. It's kind of the primordial chaos, or the original egg. And then you crack that egg, and then you have yolk and white, which is the yin and yang. So there's even a yin yang dual, kind of dialectical thinking, and there's also even a sancai, or the three power kind of thinking, which we kind of talked about, tian ren di. There's even si xiang, base four thinking, which are the greater yin, lesser yin, greater yang, and lesser yang.
Yeah.
And then
you've got whole system of medicine built on that from Korea with the satsang.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
They look at that for.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
And then after the four, what have you got?
Then you have after the Taiyang, Shaoyang, Taiying, Shaoying, which are the Si Xiang, which are the four images. You have the Wu Xing, which are the
5 phases.
It's often translated as 5. Yes, I love that. You said 5 phases, Max. That's beautiful, because it's a pet peeve of mine when people translate it as the 5 elements, because Xing literally means to walk. So they're a dynamic phasing of our reality, not like solid set categories.
Right. And just in case you don't know that Xing actually means walk, if you do go to Taiwan and at the intersections, you'll see the character Xing when it means walk. It's in green.
Exactly. 人行道, actually. 人行道literally means person walking path, which is a crosswalk. Yeah, 人行道. And then you have, we don't have to go through every number, but you have the 六合, which are the 6 harmonies, which if you get into like internal martial arts, that's a big deal. That is, for instance, the coordination of the main joint limbs. That is the proximal hips and shoulders, the distal wrist and ankles, and the middle elbows and knees. Vertical, diagonal, and horizontal cross connections between contralateral, say left elbow, right knee, or ipsilateral, right elbow, right knee. Or,
wait a minute, isn't there an acupuncture system based on this?
Yeah, exactly. But, actually those principles come from, I believe, cultivation, actually. So from, Neigong or Qigong, or what I call Gongfa. Sometimes I joke, when you see like old people in Taiwan or China, moving so slow in the park doing their Tai Chi, I like to say it's not because they're old, but what they're trying to do is find and feel and coordinate those connections, which... Just among the 4 center limbs, elbows and knees, there are 6 bilateral connections, or 12 total, just between the elbows and knees. And the total number of connection between the 3 main limb joints, I train and calculate as 64, which is an interesting coincidence with the number of hexagrams in the classic of changes.
Yes, it's curious, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's the 六合, which is 2 to the 6th power. There's even a 6 there in terms of the hexagrams, right?
Right. Or the Liujing, right?
Yeah, exactly. Sanghanlun, right? The Liujing.
Sanghanlun,
exactly.
Yeah.
And then Qixing, which has to do with more kind of actually what we're kind of talking about, astronomy or astrology, which are the 7 stars, 8 Bagua, right? The 8 trigrams, which has its own kind of cosmology. But I like to say that what is allowing us to see and talk to each other right now is based on the trigrams. When William Leibniz went to China and studied the I Ching, he had the insight to translate the yin and yang, yao, those lines, those solid and broken lines, into 0 and 1s to develop the binary system, which is the base code of computer software. So that comes from I Ching too. And then 9 is the Jiugong, which are the 9 palaces, which, maybe you've heard like the magic square, which has all the angle, the diagonal, vertical, horizontal add up to 15. So that has to do with, all these things I'm talking about have applications in Chinese medicine, Chinese martial arts, Chinese cultivation. But yeah, and then we get to 10, which are the 10 heavenly stems. So there's 10 of those, which simply come from a doubling of the 5 phases. 木火土金水, right? All the 5 phases doubled because there's a yin and yang polarity. So back to Bazi. Yeah.
I mean, the Zangfu organs comes out of that.
There, exactly. Yeah. 五运六气, the 5 transportations and the 六气, right? You have like the 6 different types of qi. And so if we go back to Bazi, so on the top row, you have 4 out of the 8 characters. And there's 10 possibilities that those can be. So that comes from one of the 10 heavenly stems. So for instance, you calculate and someone could be yang fire or yin metal, and then etc. And so there's one for the year, one for the month, one for the day, and one for the time. The most important one they did through a lot of case studies throughout Bazi history is not the year, month, or day, year, month, or hour. It is the day. So they call that the day master. The reason that's important is everything in your chart, those remaining 7 characters out of the 8, are relative to your day master. So you cannot interpret a Bazi until you know what someone's day master is. Are they yang wood? Are they, yin water? And then all the other characters mean something relative to that.
This episode is brought to you by Jane, the clinic management software that I use to keep my practice running smoothly. So let's talk about something that can be a little bit uncomfortable: raising your fees. I know, this is something that might feel awkward, but it doesn't have to. With a bit of planning and care, you can handle it in a way that feels right for you and your patients. One tip: give yourself at least 2 months to prepare. This gives you time to get comfortable with the change and let your patients know what's happening. You can share the news through emails, booking reminders, or even just a friendly little sign in your clinic, and avoid over-apologizing. Instead, keep it straightforward and matter of fact. Keeping things consistent across the ways that you communicate can really help avoid confusion. Fee increases aren't always easy, but you're not on your own here. For more tips and ideas on how to communicate these changes with confidence, check out frontdesk.chain.app and look for the article, How to Tell Your Clients You're Raising Your Fees. Oh, and one last thing, if you're ready to give Jane a try, use the code CHIOLOGICAL for a 1-month grace period on your new Jane account. So that in a way would be like a person's core constitution. That's like the filter, the lens,
yes,
that all the energy in the universe going through you gets funneled through. And then everything else falls out in relationship to that.
Exactly, yeah. Or mathematics, it would be like in a coordinate system, right? An XY or XYZ coordinate system, it would be that center point, 0, 0, 0. And then from there, you know where you are. Otherwise, like, where's the center, right? You're kind of lost in space. Another way to look at it is, just an example. For instance, if you are wood, okay, we'll even leave out the polarity for now, just wood. And someone comes to you to do their bazi, and say a common thing like nowadays, especially since couples are getting married and having children later, is fertility, right? So a woman or man, a couple comes and they're looking for some consultation for acupuncture, right? And say you do treatments for them, and say you're pretty good, you're able to help most couples or most women conceive within, I don't know, let's say 8 months. That's kind of your average, right? Plus or minus. But for this couple, you're kind of struggling. It's 10 months in, 12 months in, and they're kind of getting frustrated. And you're like, I don't know. I usually, more successful in getting this done. So one thing you can consult is their bazi chart. Another thing you can consult is their feng shui, which is more of a looking at spacing, but we won't get into that. But you can, for a wood woman, say her day master is wood, what you're going to look for in her chart is water. Not water, you're going to look for fire, because fire is the child of wood. Wood generates fire. So maybe you look in her chart, especially in the life progression part, and you're like, oh my God, there's been no fire chi in her temporal energetics, if you will, for the last 5 years, 10 years. But you can resolve, you can go deeper into, you can go year by year even, and see that, hey, come next April, boom, there's a window of fire that kicks in. So let's just kind of do basic nourishing until then, get your kind of nest ready, and then let's kind of focus on that time frame, and then boom, actually, for whatever exactly how it works, we don't know, but Bazi allows you to read the timing and the flow of someone's life, and then in April, boom, you're successful in getting them pregnant.
Because
so that's just one application.
She's a wood type, and if she is actually going to create a child, sheng cycle,
yes,
then the fire, there has to be some kind of receptivity to that resonance of fire.
Yeah, exactly.
Or the wood can't transfer into that phase.
Exactly. So her birth chart creates a context, again, we brought that up earlier, where it's more likely, brings in kind of fertility energy into her chart. And then so it's more conducive to then conceiving. That's just in one example, but as we said earlier, these different phases can represent different things. So fire for a wood person, regardless of male, female, can also mean creativity. So this would be a time as to where maybe you start a podcast or open a clinic.
An acupuncture practice, right?
Exactly. Yeah. This is a time where you're able to follow through more and be more productive, cultivate your creativity, your expression, your talents. Maybe you're an artist and you get recognized during this time, or you have your first kind of exhibit at a gallery during this time. So that's kind of also fire, the meaning of fire for a wood person. As to whether it is beneficial or not, then we have to get into one more layer of diagnosis. So to know someone's diagnosis, I'm using that since we're a Chinese medicine podcast, you need to know 3 things about their day master. We already talked about 2 of them. One is their phase, wood, fire, earth, water, metal. 木火土金水 is faster in Chinese. And then you need to know the polarity. Okay, are they yang fire or yin fire? That creates another nuance. And then furthermore, you have to know their strength, the propensity. Maybe their day master is fire, but everything else in their chart is water, right? So actually that fire is pretty low propensity. It's not so substantial. That's not necessarily good or bad, but their personality is maybe not that fiery. They may more have a watery personality. And then that also goes into what are their beneficial elements. Someone who is, let's say, weaker, yang fire, then you get into treatment principle. They need more fire, or they need more wood, which is the mother of fire in their constitution. Whereas someone who is fire day master, but they have a lot of wood and fire in their chart, they will be considered a fiery fire, so a strong fire chart. And so in that context, they actually don't want more wood or fire. The treatment principle for someone who has a strong chart is actually to drain them. So maybe you want to drain them by adding earth. Fire generates earth, and they may feel better. And it's interesting, you'll notice that, you meet this person, they like to dress in earth tones. Or you go to their house and they have a lot of like pottery or terracotta, or they live like on a hill, right? Which is earthy. Or they wear a lot of bling, a lot of metal, right? Which is, I'm sorry, actually, what I just said would be relevant for a weak earth person. They want more earth. Whereas a strong earth person, maybe they're wearing a lot of metal, which drains earth because it's a child of earth. So they feel better wearing like a big watch or like a big pendant,
right. Or like you were saying, if they were the strong fire type, they might have more earthy stuff in them because they're actually trying to drain some of that fire into earth.
Yeah, 火生土, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So right now we're looking at one of the relationships in terms of 5 elements, which is the child. But, there's actually 5 relationships.
Right. We could work from all kinds of directions. You could work, if they're too fiery, you could tonify the water.
Yeah, exactly.
That would help. That would help to cool the fire.
Exactly.
Yeah, through the Ke cycle.
Exactly, through the Ke cycle. And so there's a lot of nuance, but it basically boils down to applying those strategies in terms of, like we just said, adding things in their interior design or environment, or looking at, time in their chart where there's more fire, more water. Or one interesting application that is often the case is for like dating, finding a romantic partner or finding a business partner. Like I've done consultation where like someone would come to me and they're like, you know what? I'm dating a couple people. Can you do our compatibility charts? Like, which one do you think I'm more compatible with? And I don't usually, say you should date this person or that person, but you can look at the chart and say, wow, for this person, when it interacts with your chart, it creates more like financial resources, wealth. So if you're looking for, that kind of security, then this person offers that. Whereas this one, it creates a lot more kind of like knowledge, inspiration, spirituality. You can talk with this person for like until 2 or 3 a.m. and then they'll laugh like, oh, that's totally true with this person. The other person is really practical. and the second person is really, they can have these beautiful intellectual conversations. And so if that's what you're looking for now in your life, then I would say this person is more, can offer that. I'm not going to tell you which one to go with, but, and they're like, oh, wow, that's so interesting. This is exactly what I experienced with these two different individuals. And so you can help often confirm, you can make explicit what is often implicit by intuition with people. And that helps people resolve things in terms of procrastination or indecision, like right now or going into the future. But I've also found that it's very powerful to help people resolve past trauma.
Mm-hmm. Is that because you can look back at an experience and go, oh, I see how that would have come about. They're like this, I'm like that.
Yeah.
Had we found this middle path, we might have been able to resolve it. But
yeah,
if you don't find the middle path, then things break apart in a certain kind of way.
I think a lot of people dissipate their qi, their yi, qi, li, their intention, emotion, and even their action, through the duality of time that is projected into the yang ming future or into the tai yang past. And the thing about that, then they're not able to reclaim that energy for present healing, right? A lot of our patients come into that worrying about the future, regretting the past. And what Bazi can offer is that you look into this time frame, say in 20 years ago, and you're like, hey, like I see that this happened, maybe something with your family, with your father or something like that, or your mother. And there was a conflict there that I see, and whatever, maybe a divorce or something like that. Mm-hmm. And what happens is like people will say like, wait, that's in there? And I was like, yeah, I see this kind of dynamic going on. And sometimes people will get really emotional because what happens is that they start to let go of something which is huge as a human in terms of our health and illness, more in our illness, which is blame and shame. Mm-hmm. So they're able to stop blaming other people or shaming themselves, feeling ashamed for certain things that happened in the past, and then therefore able to claim that energy for their present healing. So Bazi can offer that. You can go back, and I often go back in the beginning of a consultation in order to confirm that I laid out their chart correctly, because there's a lot of details. So maybe I made a mistake here or there. So often that's why it takes, I have a waiting list of like 6 to 8 weeks because not only do I have a lot of people that want me to do the chart, but I have to double and triple check it to make sure I did it correctly. And then, so when you go back, you can say, oh, I see that this time, you had, better money time, or either, or maybe you lost a lot of money. So, and then, then you can kind of confirm, yeah, this time I was just rolling in the dough, so it's like, okay, I think this chart.
Okay, yeah. So you can double check yourself.
Yes, exactly.
Kind of like doing a treatment, then you go and you check the pulse, and oh yeah, the pulse is better. Yeah, so we're, exactly. I think I'm moving in the right direction.
Exactly. Yeah. That's that live feedback is important to check that we're moving in the right trajectory.
Absolutely. Well, I'm struck as we're talking about this, using the Bazi to look at moments in the past that they had some kind of emotional charge.
Yes.
So often we will talk in Chinese medicine about that. And I think other traditions talk about it as well. It's not just Chinese medicine, but we'll have experiences and we store them in our physicality. Our physiology does not forget.
Yes.
And if we can somehow tap into that physiology, things come to a certain kind of awareness as a result, and then it can resolve.
Yeah, that's huge. I think physiology, I think most of us, especially those of us who are ill, are stuck replaying or reviewing the past in the present, rather than something which I think is more powerful or more empowering, which is previewing our future in the present. Not in a way that you're obsessing or about something happening in the future, but you're trying to embody those mental and emotional states now rather than, things from the past, like I said, blame or shame or regret or frustration or jealousy or whatever. And actually, I think our brain, our hardware is actually something that is actually in the past. The only thing that can drive us forward is actually a new intention. So sometimes I say or teach or tell patients that your mindset, your belief, and your habits are unchangeable because those are crystallizations. Those are usually unconscious. And so the only place where we can actually create change, back to that philosophy of eat, is in with a conscious intention and raising our kind of emotional states and then choosing an action now. That's kind of the time frame where we can actually enact a change. Our so-called habits and mindsets and beliefs are they're stuck. So I believe that as practitioners, we're trying to create a shift we're trying to shift our patients actually into the present moment. But that requires resolving some things in the past.
So that people can let go of it.
Exactly, yeah. So they can reclaim that energy to do something now, and as a toolbox, it can be helpful for.
This is really interesting because, so often people come in, they've got a problem because of a certain habit they have, a thing they love to eat or a thing they love to do, whatever it is. And we talk about how habits are so hard to change. In fact, all you've got to do is go on the internet and there's a million people trying to sell you lots of methods. I'm going to change your habits in like 3 weeks without even you having to try. Right? That's for sale all over the place. We know it doesn't work. We know it's a come on, and lots of people fall for it because there's that part of us that does want change. And so
and especially that easy change, right? That kind of change without having to let go of something.
Right, but what you're talking about here is that the things that are crystallized are unchangeable. So I love thinking about this because it's like, okay, so you could try to change this habit, but you are swimming upstream and the stream is stronger than you're swimming. So you have to go back downstream to where this thing came from and remove that blockage.
I think we can look at it from another direction rather than, memorizing the past now. I think what has to be done is, I'll throw out another term, which is identification. Mm-hmm. Any kind of I am statement is the most powerful statement that you can say as a human being, because we are meaning creating beings, if you will. I am sick, I am tired, I am stressed, I am pissed off, I am high blood pressure, I am diabetes, etc. So a strong identification, which we practice, which then over time gets embedded in our subconscious, it's almost impossible to change. So what we need to do is, like Einstein say, like repeating the same level of consciousness and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. And a lot of us, I think, are losing our insanity, not just with that definition, but just with modern life. We have so much identities that we feel like we need to sustain. So part of the process using bazi, using acupuncture, or what I think is most powerful for that is cultivation, what I call gongfa, which is examining those layers of identity, which to me are like layers of clothing. And some of us are walking around with like 50 different layers, carrying them and without re-examining, is this layer actually useful for me? Is there some way where I can do like an inventory and take off some of those layers? So to me, like any kind of cultivation practice, I call it gongfa, but some use yoga, meditation, etc., is like entering the changing room. Or it's like going shopping. You go shopping and you're like, hey, that outfit looks good, at least on the mannequin, right? So I'm going to grab that pair of pants, that new shirt, and you have like these 5 or 3 new outfits that you want to try on. And you go into the changing room. What's the first thing you have to do?
Take off what you already have on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, get naked, right? And some people are not willing to let go of their layers of identity because of fear, ultimately. And even with illness, they're not willing to let go of some of their illnesses because it gives them attention. It gives them, an excuse.
Well,
not to blame the victim, but
there are
identity,
so many patients I've had, and they'll come in and I'll say, what's up? And they'll tell me their diagnosis. I have, or I am, blah, blah, blah.
I am, yeah.
Right, we're back to I am here.
I am diabetic, right?
Exactly.
Or something like that. Yeah.
And I'll ask for more information about what that means or how it feels or what it's like to have that. And there is no consciousness in that area.
Yeah, that's it.
Which is
So
I mean, that's
anything we can do
right.
to,
Anything you
yeah,
can do to bring some awareness to that. Now they've got more resources.
right. That's it. And that's the only place, again, using the terminology mindset, beliefs, and habits in terms of mental, emotional, and physical state. That's like past tense.
Yeah.
That's a program, that's a conditioning, and you cannot change that. But you can reinstall a new software cumulatively by taking new intention, new emotion, which from the Neijing, right, is a new emotional trajectory, right, rather than being stuck in the rising trajectory, in which manifests. We give it the label like anger, or a downward trajectory, which is fear, or dissipating trajectory, which is anxiety or overexcitement, or kind of a condensing energy or chi trajectory, which is like grief. In any case, these are all beautiful waves, kind of weather phenomenon. But when they get stuck in an imbalance, then that's when pathology occurs long term
Right.
over
And you
time.
just took us on a little circular tour of the Wuxing,
Yeah,
right? So
Wuxing, exactly. Yeah.
we have these, they're kind of mental constructs for us,
Mm-hmm.
but they're also ways
Mm-hmm.
that life unfolds once you can learn to feel your way into that.
Right, right.
And that's useful for our patients.
Right, exactly. It is, yeah. And so, 天人地, right? I would say the tools that, from our Chinese medical, or not even medical, Chinese philosophical, Chinese cultural background, for the Tian, to understand Tian, we develop Bazi, to understand time and timing. For Di, we develop Feng Shui, which is, a way to arrange our spatial relationships. And then for the Ren level, we developed, for instance, acupuncture and herbs, to be able to adjust our life.
And Gongfa.
And then and
And
Gongfa,
Gongfa.
actually, what I consider Gongfa is actually one that actually trumps all. I mean, the way I understand that is that you can have a bad, living environment, bad feng shui. Your feng shui is no good. You don't like your roommates. You're living kind of in a shoddy environment, and also your timing is not good. Even your bazi, this is not the best time for you, and you don't have access to practitioners of acupuncture or herbs. But if your gongfa, if your cultivation is strong, you can still be in the flow. Because you have a strong resources within to be able to handle difficult situations outside. But so that's kind of the way I see it, and that's kind of what I like to transmit. I teach acupuncture. I teach these different systems in terms of Tianzhen Di, in terms of ABC. But the thing that I focus on most is actually the cultivation. I tell students that you should do I call it gongfa. It sounds a bit, exotic, but simply, I used to call it cultivation, but I added a couple terms. The first time I added to that is self-care cultivation, because no one can do it for you, just like brushing your teeth or going to the bathroom. And I added a third term recently, which is daily self-care cultivation. Not just monthly or weekly, every damn day.
That's right. Like brushing your teeth. Brushing your teeth is daily. I mean, you want to do it 5 minutes a day. You don't want to do it 30 minutes on Saturday.
Exactly. I know you rub your gums raw, right? Yeah. Some even brush their teeth twice a day. Wow, look at that. And why do you do these kind of things? Why do you take a shower? Why do you, more or less, right? Some of us, or why do you even have the urgency to go to the bathroom? Is you feel relief, you feel better after all this, and for our emotional constipation and mental diarrhea, it's good to do some deliberate practice. And I challenge people to do at least 14.4 minutes a day. Why? Because we have 24 hours times 60, and that's 1,440 minutes a day. Is it worth 1% of your day for full focus on your mental, emotional, physical attunement? I think so, because that upgrades the remaining 99%.
So what you're basically saying is 15 minutes.
Yeah. 14.4.
Okay, but I'm gonna round. You could round down to 14, but I'm just gonna run with this because not even 15 minutes. No, I like that. Not even 15 minutes.
Because it's like if you say 2 hours, right, and you do half hour, you're like, oh my god, I didn't reach my goal. I suck, right? But if I say 14.4 minutes and you accidentally do 15 minutes, you're like, wow, I did more than I planned. I'm a badass.
Well, here's something that I really like about this. I talk to patients about gongfa, often meditation, because
Yes.
their mind is just so, I mean, they believe everything they say. And
Oh, everything they think, right?
everything they say to themselves. They believe everything
Right,
they say to
right.
themselves. And I will often suggest meditation for these folks because it's just this lovely practice of not believing what you're thinking. It's just this practice of noticing what you're
Just
thinking
watching.
and just kind of
Yes.
going, oh, well, look at that. Next.
Yeah.
All right.
Next. Yeah.
And you don't get so attached to it, which I think is very helpful for folks. And they will often say, well, I don't have time for that. I love the idea of saying, well, what if you just took 1% of your day? 1% of your day. Have you got 1% of your day? 1%. I think it would be very difficult for someone to say, of course I have 1%. How much is 1%? Not even 15 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah. Not even 15 minutes. And you know what? I say everyone, I don't care if you got 3 kids and 5 dogs. Look, you take 8 minutes from YouTube, you take, 5 minutes from Facebook, and you take 4 minutes from Instagram, boom, there's your 14.4 minutes for your, for your introception, for your alignment. And this ties into what we were talking about too, like about time and cycles and bazi. Of course, we have yin and yang. What is the yin of that? What is the duality? If we talk about time, then we have to talk about timelessness, right? That state of now, which is, I think, the most healing in terms of resetting our somatopsychic system.
Yes.
So we most of us are exhausted because of time, and space too, running all over the place in time and space, worrying about this, worrying about that. And I think part of the gongfa or self-care part is actually coming back to the center, which is the now. There's different ways that people say it, but which is actually getting to that state of timelessness where when you do your meditation and you feel like it's, 5 minutes, but actually 20 minutes went by, that's it. Mm-hmm. That's the flow state. That's it.
Imagine this. A patient walks into your clinic. They're carrying more than the pain in their body. There's a story there, a history woven with the stress of long days, the ache of things unsaid, and the quiet longing for something to shift. You listen, not just with your ears, but with your hands, your intuition, your heart. It's not just about needles or a formula. It's about connection, understanding the threads that tie us together, mind, body, and spirit. That is where golden flower Chinese herbs comes in. Rooted in tradition and crafted with care, their formulas are more than herbs. They're a bridge between ancient wisdom and modern practice. Every bottle, a quiet partner in your work, helping you to meet your patients where they are. Because healing isn't just about treating symptoms. It's about creating trust, cultivating belonging, and helping someone feel truly seen. Golden Flower Chinese Herbs, your partner in practice and connection, where tradition meets care. Well, or you're involved in something that you love.
Exactly.
And you don't even know time has gone by. Or, and this, I know you've had this experience, I've had this experience. Anyone listening to this, if you've had acupuncture, you've had the experience, and hopefully your patients have it.
Sure.
Where they go, that was fast.
Exactly.
Or they'll come back and they'll go like, where was I? They were in that timeless phase. And that, they say, where's the healing come from? I go, that place where you just were?
Exactly. That's it. Between the conscious and subconscious, where your analytical mind shuts off, and the subjective sensation is like when you're having fun, time flies when you're having fun. That's exactly it. And that's I think the most powerful and kind of distractions pull us away from that.
Yeah. So cultivating that timelessness.
Timelessness is
timelessness in Chinese. 怎么讲?
I would include that as part of wuji. Ji is polarity or extremity, right? Taiji is the full spectrum of that. But wuji is actually literally, wu means non or not. So wuji to me means non-duality, non-dual state, which the Tibetans call chokchen, or the Advaita Vedantas. They have different names for it. But for us in the Chinese medicine tradition, I would call it wuji.
Qi.
Which for
Non-dual state.
non-dual state, which for our patients, you can induce that, right, with acupuncture, because they can't move, right, with the needles in. So that's rare nowadays, right? Just being there.
Well, yeah, first of all, just pinning them to the table,
Exactly.
I think is helpful. But the other thing, of course, that we know is acupuncture has this incredibly profound effect on our being.
Yes, yeah. And back to time cycles, the Neijing says that there are 50 circadian cycles in one day, right? Of the meridian system, right? And so actually, if you calculate that, actually 50 cycles means that each cycle is 28.8 minutes, which is 2%. So that's why I tell patients, that minimum number of time I want you to cook is 28.8 minutes. They're like, so specific? I'm like, yeah, that's 2% of your day. Of course, we can round up. If we accidentally do 30 minutes, that's cool. And if we do an hour, some people need 2 cycles, right? They need like a yin yang cycle. So some people, I think I had a record. One patient stayed for like almost 6 hours because they were just the battery was so drained. So, they did 12 cycles of those 28.8s. Yeah. I was like, I need to leave now, but I kept checking. The funny thing is they felt like I need to get out of here in 20 minutes. I was like, okay, we'll see about that. It ended up being like 5-6 hours.
5-6 hours. Wow. Talk about Wuji timelessness.
Exactly. Yeah. They're like, wow, has it been that long? Yeah. So yeah, we have all these tools to examine time, process time. And that's what Bazi was developed for, to examine. But then the flip side is just as important if we kind of zoom out to the greater theme of what time is. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So we're about 50 minutes into
this
conversation.
It feels like 15.
Yeah, well, Uji, baby.
Yeah, that's right. We're in the flow.
And we've covered so much. I can't wait to edit this because now I'll get to listen to it again.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I mean, there's just so many other places that we could go with that. One of the things I want to ask you about, there's a term that I learned when I was in Taiwan.
Yes.
That I think is a fabulous term. And I want to see what this strikes a resonance with you in.
Okay.
And how it connects with the Bazi.
Okay.
So the phrase in Chinese is yuan fen.
Oh, I knew you were going to go there. I love that.
Did you?
Yes.
Oh, 肯定是缘分的吧? Okay. So in English, you would take yuan fen is often translated as fate.
Yes.
Which kind of gets at it, but in Chinese, it has a whole different meaning.
Yeah.
I've got my idea of what it is, but I'd love to get your take on yuan fen and its connection with the Bazi.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay. We're talking at this moment, 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Why? Because we were supposed to, if someone meets, sometimes, they're like, oh, it's so great to meet you. I can't believe I finally met you. We met when we were supposed to meet. What is that? What is that? Are there certain strings that tie us together? Because in the character for yuan, there's a mi zi pang on the left side of there's a radical for silk.
Silk radical.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So if you take that image, if we just go with that, then I believe that, in Western physics, they have the string theory, right? That there's a dimensions embedded within dimensions, along these membranes, 11-dimensional membranes. But so whether you talk about string theory, where you talk about your infant having the radical for silk threads, I think there are certain things that tie us together, beyond space and time, not even to go beyond this lifetime. But I think Bazi is a way to try to tease out some of those patterns, in the warp and woof of those threads that tie us together. I've been grateful to meet different teachers, and I feel like it's that sense when you meet someone. It could be a teacher, it could be a person, like first love kind of feeling, but of familiarity. So yuan fen is like family, like long lost family. That kind of feeling for me. That there's you said people call it destiny or fate, right? Which kind of makes it a bit kind of abstract or cold for me. For me, it is that feeling of familial feeling of family that ties us together beyond like our actual ethnicity or country or geography. It's like when you meet someone, it's like, wow, actually, there's that kinship that
Kinship, that's a great
who
word.
knows where it comes from. It could just be a certain resonance that you have here and now, that maybe if you met each other like last year or in 2 weeks, you wouldn't have it. So that goes to say that everything is changing. Things come and go, and that's the thing about Bazi too. You realize that there's these waves. Like you stop trying to control so much, and when you and tying into Gongfa and cultivation is like you tie in these different philosophies. So you go back to something as simple as when you're able to inspire, which is our entry into this life. You appreciate it. You're able to inspire. And when you expire, you remember death, because at some point it is going to be your last moment of letting go. But that is the kind of the philosophy of Bazi, or change, like within one cycle of breath. And we can practice that, every moment. Let go of something with every expiration, rather than holding on. I think that's the hardest thing for nowadays. Like we have so many things that we can hold on to. Like we have 20 browser tabs open. We have all those files down.
I might get to this one. Just in case. I might want my attention over there. Yeah.
Exactly. Because another meaning of Yi in terms of the I Ching is actually simplicity, which is kind of popular nowadays. There's all these shows about like minimalization. And so a second crucial meaning is actually try to, simplify, not necessarily just by getting rid of stuff. That's one kind of a more negative way of simplification. Another way is integration. When you have all these separate parts and you tie them together into one, that's a kind of simplification by integration too. So that's also very helpful, and that ties us back into that state of oneness or timelessness that is so healing, so valuable as a human, to be in that flow. So Yuanfen is I love that. Like I traveled to 20 countries in the last 3 years. And I feel every person I meet, even if it's just some random person at a cafe on the sidewalks of Athens or wherever in the Arctic Circle, where I run into someone who's from Taiwan or something like that. It's like there's all these silk threads, these kind of ephemeral, but meaningful threads that tie us together. And when they're gone, they're gone. It's like, wow, but thank you.
Right. When they're there, they're there.
Yeah.
When they're gone, they're gone. And I mean, for me as a Westerner, the idea of something being fate, it's almost like you're doomed to it, or it's predestiny. There's no choice in the matter.
Yes.
It's just going to unfold that way. And the thing, my sense of Yuanfen as a non-native Chinese, barely speaker, is that there is that sense of kinship. There is that sense of connection. It's arising in this moment. And there's also a choice in it.
Yes.
There's a choice to connect. Yeah. There's a choice not to connect. It's not like it has to happen, but that the conditions are ripe, that with some intention, and it takes a little bit of movement from inside of oneself to connect with that moment or connect with that person. But the opportunity is very ripe should you choose to open that connection up and see what's there.
That's awesome. Because the second part of the character for Yuan, is elephant. Or some translate that radical as pig. But let's just go with elephant. It's like the silk threads are so ephemeral, like we say, right? And so it's you as the elephant. You can choose to go with it or to break that thread. It's kind of an interesting image. Yeah.
And that image also, that elephant character also means like image.
Also, it does,
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Xiang, right? It means image.
Exactly. So all these different layers, of Yuan that ties into it. You have the free will and that strong ego, which can be represented by the image of the elephant. But you can also try to listen and try to align with those threads that are often very subtle. That if your life is too noisy, you cannot hear that still small voice that is telling you, to follow this path, which may be actually more meaningful for you. But you're like, no, I can't let go. I have to keep going on this way. And you kind of barge down and stampede rather than try to tie into those more subtle and more meaningful threads. And the second part of Yuanfen is fen, is actually like a portion of. So when it runs out, right? And so sometimes
when you got it, you got it.
Sometimes the subconscious just stops, say, okay, I give up, on trying to tell him, so your fin runs out, and then you lose your opportunity to connect with someone or something because you were too hard-headed to
Well,
listen.
and this all unfolds inside of time.
Yes.
And time is limited, and time comes in portions and moments, and so yeah, it's that momentary allotment.
Right.
That's something.
Yeah, sometimes I've had, some really deep, meaningful conversations for 10, 15 minutes for someone at an airport. And that stays with me for years, rather than, sometimes you're in a relationship with someone, you get sick of the other. It's like, yeah. So you never know. You cannot take it for granted, the time frame, or the key thing is actually, in terms of I believe in our current life, is to maximize meaning and to be able to adapt to the flow and let go of things and dare to take on new things that actually can generate new meaning, rather than try to stay with something that is actually devoid of meaning anymore. But we stay there just because of comfort or our fear
or
boils down to that.
Obligation, or there's so many reasons why we can stay.
Yeah. So using all these tools, 八字, is our main theme, to try to shift whatever it is. They're all useful in a way. This can help you shift 20%. This can help you shift 40%. But at some point, don't. Especially now, back to cultivation, is like don't finish a session of meditation or qigong or yoga the same as when you entered it. Let that be your goal. Walk off that mat or off that cushion at least 0.1% different than when you started, and that becomes cumulative. Otherwise, nothing will change. You're just replaying all the programs and conditioning. So. And the hard thing is, because others around us, like your mom, try to keep you as a 10-year-old boy, which exists actually concurrently now. And just like your 80-year-old self, if you make it that far, is existing now in some place, But try to cherish the yuanfen of the moment as it lasts between where you are and the people around you. So
yeah, I'm glad I asked you about this, because. Well, partly because it was just one of my favorite terms that I remember learning. Something lit up in me, and life seemed a little bit different after that.
Yeah.
On occasion, things show up, and it's like that. But the other thing is, so often with anything that's got kind of an aspect of oracle to it, right, which the Bodhsa does, or horoscopes here in the West, it's easy to look at it and go, well, because my chart's like this, I'm like that, blah, blah, blah. But we get these choices about what we do with the influences. And it seems that the Bodhsa can be very helpful,
right?
Because we can see what are the current influences in relation to our sort of core constitutional character. Am I swimming upstream? Am I swimming downstream?
Exactly.
Is the wind behind me or in front of me?
Yeah.
And if the wind is going to shift in a couple of days, maybe I just would like to practice some cultivation until that happens.
That's how it fits together. Exactly. That's beautiful. You said, so it's like a weather pattern. You're checking the Bazi is like checking the weather. It's raining outside.
It's the weather report.
Yeah, but you can still go outside. It's not. No one said that you can't go outside, but it's raining, bro. and in terms of Bazi, in terms of another thing, which is a lot of clients want, is in terms of money. So there are times where you get a higher return on investment because your money time is showing up. So like if you're in Vegas, you can try to consult your bosses to try to, I'm gonna go pull the one arm bandit right now, or in half an hour, I'm going to stay at the bar until then because, so in Bazi, that is the 我克 relationship. So again, if you are, let's say metal, wood represents your money time because money and resources are that which you control. Yeah, right.
I didn't think about it that way before.
So
money and resources are the thing that you control.
我克, yeah. So metal controlling wood. Yeah. So you would look for a wood time. But again, there's nuance. Like is actually, it could be, Chinese medicine has this dialectic. Is when wood shows up for a metal person, does that mean you'll make money or lose money? It's related to money, but you have to go a little bit deeper again to what we said. If you are a strong metal person, then actually wood represents gaining money because your metal is strong enough to get it. But if you are
if you're weak metal,
yes, you lose money at that time.
小心.
Like,
be careful.
Exactly.
Right.
So what you need as a weak metal person, what is gaining money? What element needs to show up? It is actually metal itself. Actually, yeah.
Oh, metal itself.
Yeah. There's something in Bazi called 劫财, which literally means to grasp finances. And that is actually the same element as you, same phase as you. So metal for a metal person, opposite polarity, yin metal for yang metal. In any case, it's the same element. That's when your money comes in as a weak metal person. So there are some more kind of details to it, but yeah, it's another useful tool to consult. But it's like I said, it's a blueprint, or it's like a script for a movie, right? But if you have Quentin Tarantino directing, right, versus Clint Eastwood directing, and you have Tom Cruise versus whatever, like Lady Gaga acting, it's a different producer, different director. The movie turns out different, even though, like you said, the influences are the same. It's in certain time frames, but what you choose to do with it, it could be a completely different movie that shows up.
Right.
Yeah.
And the thing that I love about this, I mean, we're having a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I know a little bit more about Bazi than I did an hour ago.
Great.
But the thing that I am most struck by is the very basics that we all have learned in acquiring whatever modicum of skill and knowledge we have with Chinese medicine.
Yeah, modicum, yeah.
all stems from this. We're looking at 5 phases, we're looking at 6 qi, we're looking at deficiency or excess.
Yes.
These are all things, these are ways of parsing reality.
Yes.
That we all have a bit of experience with.
Right.
So it seems like digging into the Bazi, of course, we're not going to be instant experts,
right.
But it shouldn't be like a completely foreign language.
It shouldn't be.
Because we're already thinking in these kinds of ways.
Yeah. So, I mean, the classes that we teach on Bazi are open to even laymen. Of course, they'll struggle a bit more because they don't have a basis in Chinese philosophy, which is the foundation of Chinese medicine. Chinese philosophy predates, Chinese medicine. It's just applied or infused into the practice of health and illness. But as a Chinese medicine practitioner, it's actually a beautiful way to kind of review and connect ideas that are maybe kind of disparate, or another way to apply it as to study more timing rather than just for herbs or acupuncture. So and it connects just like our conversation is connecting so many different things. So it becomes like a philosophy or a lifestyle or a worldview. And so so I think it's another course of study that I think Chinese medicine practitioners would find interesting and inspiring even.
Tell us a little more about the classes that you teach and how people can find out about that and get in touch with you.
Yeah, so my website is daocenter.com. So I have that more set up I have Bazi consultations available, and I also have the Gongfa classes. The Dao De Gongfa is the system that I integrated that I teach. So my schedule there. But I also teach with the Siyuan Balance Method. So that's the main organization that I teach with, as well as the Academy of Acupuncture. So if people want to directly reach me, the easiest way is through my website, daocenter.com.
Okay, I'll make sure it's on the show notes page.
Yeah, thank you. And then if there's any questions or about what we talked about or anything related to Chinese medicine, acupuncture, I'd be happy to. I won't maybe get back to you right away, but we'd love to hear from everyone.
How many countries and how many days?
I mean, sometimes I'm back to back.
A lot,
yeah,
right?
The last month I went to Lisbon, Portugal, Geneva, Switzerland, Athens, Greece, and then taught in San Francisco, and then tomorrow I go to Indonesia, and then to Taiwan, to Paris, Madrid.
You're a good person to ask this question. What do you do for jet lag?
Oh, so in terms of that's related, huh? In terms of time. So okay, the first way, the most fundamental is actually my state of consciousness. So you know how people are like, oh wow, you just flew 12 hours from San Francisco. What time is it there? It must be like, I say stop. I'm here now. So one is the psychological state. Like I say, I don't want to know what time it is where I was. I'm here right now, with you. And so that's one thing, is just to be fully in the present rather than, like we said, dissipating energy into another space time. I'm here in this time space. So that's one strategy. I think that's the most fundamental. The second thing is you have to train yourself, whether through Gongfa or hypnosis or whatever, to be able to sleep on airplanes. If not, you're going to really suffer. You cannot travel long distance, long term. So I'm able to knock out at will, even with crying babies and turbulence. I can hibernate like a turtle, for 11 hours out of a 13-hour flight, not getting up to pee or to drink.
Superpower.
Yeah. And then the other thing is once I land, it could be a layover. The first thing I try to do is, if it's a layover, the first thing I try to do is find one of those prayer rooms or those meditation rooms, which most actually countries have. Actually, except for China, I was having difficulty, but most other countries they have, and most actually airports, no one is using them. But I try to do that and spend my layover mostly in that kind of cultivation state. And once you're on the ground, as soon as possible, take off your shoes and go onto Google Maps and find like a green spot, take off your shoes and ground. And another aspect is as much as possible, get, as much bright sunlight on your skin as possible and in your retina with your eyes closed, of course, safely. And then hydrate with, ideally with, local water if possible. So these are all like little strategies that I use at home. Actually, I use near infrared light to recharge myself, to detox from all the blue light toxicity, which is, all over the place, especially in airports. So I try to use that.
Is that something that goes into your eyes, or is that like an far infrared sauna? What is that?
I have a device that I bought. It's it's about maybe 2 square foot of infrared and near infrared light. So I just get, as naked as possible in front of it. I put it in front of me, I put it behind me. I close my eyes when I use it, but I also sometimes use some shades to protect my eyes. But that's like a superfood because light is nutrition, right? And most of the time we get junk food, which is like this tiny spectrum.
Light.
Yeah, this tiny spectrum of full spectrum light, which is mostly blue light, which there's a lot of studies on blue light toxicity, especially as a kid, like you look at a phone at full brightness and you're telling your body that it's noontime, like 6,000, 7,000 kelvins of light. And so it shuts down, your melatonin production. The only time we had that kind of intensity of light was noontime back in the day, but you're looking at it at 6 p.m., 10 p.m. So that's another strategy I use. I use blue light blocking glasses when I travel to prevent that kind of excess ingestion of junk light. And as soon as possible, I try to look up to Tian and absorb full spectrum nutrition as possible.
In the location that you're in.
In the location that I'm in.
Makes a difference.
Reset my circadian, my suprachiasmatic nucleus, my top clock here.
Top clock. Great. Well, Paul, thank you. I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for your time today.
Max, thank you for having me on the show. And it's nice to meet you, at least digitally. And thank you to the listeners out there, too, for taking time out to listen in. So stay in touch with us.
Well, here we are at the end of this episode. If you've listened up to this point, you're either a rabid fan of Qiological or the forward button on your podcast player stopped working. If you are indeed a fan of the podcast, you can help us to bring new episodes to our community of practitioners by supporting us with a membership or a one-time contribution. Details, of course, are on the website. That's it for today, friends. Join us again next Tuesday for another thoughtful episode of Qiological.